We're going to be doing like a big Players Cup team report breakdown of the team I used in Players Cup 4. My Kyogre Rain team that I spent like 3 days straight, all day, every day, practicing and building. I'm going to break it down for you guys, why I think it was a good meta call, and why I think it was really cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, when I started building my Players Cup 4 team, I knew what was very popular in the meta. It was like Zacian, Thundurus, Torkoal Venusaur, Groudon Venusaur, Charizard, Colossal, all these kinds of things. And when I was thinking what I want to use, I somewhat have a problem in competitive Pokemon where I don't know. I want to use more fun or cool, different stuff when I can. I'll go into a tournament with a very standard team. I don't even think this team is very crazy or unstandard, but I knew I wanted to use Kyogre. I love the fact that Kyogre has completely accurate moves that can just obliterate the enemy team. Kyogre in an amazing position can just water spout its way through a team. It is 100% accurate. It hits both targets and it does an absolutely absurd amount of damage. Also, it controls the weather. All those sun teams out there, when I shut down the sun, Charizard's a lot less useful. Venusaur's way slower. Torkoal in the rain is useless. Groudon in the rain is going to get murdered by water moves, etc. And I just knew that a well-positioned Kyogre could beat any team in the game, and it was a playstyle that I really liked and enjoyed. This kind of slow, methodical, positioning-based team. And Kyogre is 100% a positioning-based Pokemon. You can't switch in Kyogre on hits and then you just weaken your water spout. You have to get it in, taking no damage. You have to position well, and I really like that. And then another thing is that, you know, most people use Tornadus, so like Torn Ogre, the Torn Ogre Timmies, as they've been called. I knew that when I was making my Kyogre, there were so many Tailwind-based teams going around, so much Calyrex, Calyrex Shadow, hyper offense stuff with Whimsicott. They would just outspeed me, hit me with expanding fours, Astral Barrage, something like that, and I would never be able to get up full power water spouts. I was confident that I could get off full power water spouts under Trick Room. And I liked the idea of having a bulky Kyogre that would 100% live 2 Behemoth Blades from Zacian. Your standard max speed, max special attack Kyogre cannot handle that. I thought that Trick Room Kyogre was going to be a really, really cool call, and it let me be a much bulkier Kyogre. I knew that the matchups I wanted to beat were Colossal, Zacian Thundy, and Sun. So you guys know I started with Kyogre, so let's get into Kyogre first. So here we go, guys. The beginning of my team was Kyogre. Like I said, when it's well positioned, it does insane damage that cannot miss. Water Spout, 100% accurate. And then I really like that Kyogre is a flexible Dynamax. Now it can Dynamax and just shoot off the most insanely high base powered max geysers off of Water Spout in the rain, setting up rain, all that good stuff. So I knew it was a great Dynamax in certain situations, but it's a Pokemon that doesn't need Dynamax at all. You can just never, you know, Dynamax Kyogre. And I really like that. I think that having Pokemon that are flexible, needing to Dynamax, needing to not Dynamax, are really nice. That's why I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Pokemon such as Thundurus or even like Durant in past series, where they are pretty much only good when they are Dynamaxed. And I knew Kyogre was good in and out. And then, of course, weather control. Sun is everywhere. Whether it's a Torkoal, whether it's a Groudon, we've even been seeing some sunny days, Sableye and Whimsicott. Sun is extremely dominant right now. And I knew that having a rain setup was going to be helpful. It's going to, you know, shut them down. Now, Sun has great options against Kyogre still with Venusaur, with Groudon getting up like Swords Dances, surviving and killing back, and Grimmsnarl being really annoying too. But I still knew that this was going to be a problem for those Sun teams if I can play it really well. I went with Mystic Water as my held item. It boosts water moves by 20%. I have Water Spout and Origin Pulse, and then I went with Thunder and Protect. Very standard stuff, but like I said, I liked having this bulky Kyogre. This Kyogre takes a +1 Zacian Behemoth Blade Jolly 100% of the time. It can take 2. It does a maximum of 48%. Once again, if you're like a max special attack, max speed, you're going to get knocked out by these kinds of things. I really liked that. I felt very, very bulky and strong. And then the speed tier is very important. I only have 12 EVs and I'm modest nature. It hits a speed of 112. 112 speed at +1 outspeeds base 100s. So those are things like Charizard, things like opposing Zapdos, Solgalios, Urshifu, stuff like that. It's a very good speed tier to be faster than. And then at +2, because guys, I have a Zapdos with Hurricane for max airstream. At +2, I outspeed Calyrex Shadow Rider. And that's also things like Dragapult, Zacian, etc. So at +2, I'm outspeeding everything relevant in the whole game except for Regieleki. And then 112 speed is also pretty slow under Trick Room. I felt confident that I'm going to be slower than most Groudons I play against. I'm going to be slower than Venusaurs, Rotoms, all these kinds of popular Pokemon that aren't super fast. Urshifu, Solgalios, I'm going to be slower than all of that easily. And so I thought this was a super flexible kind of speed tier for Kyogre to hit for both max airstream and the Trick Room option that I talked about that I wanted. And then I talked about it before, but I went for double water. Now you can go with one water move, Ice Beam and Thunder and Protect. Ice Beam is really, it feels like you really want it into a lot of grass types. Amoonguss can be a huge issue for Kyogre. Even things like Ferrothorn, you know, in the late game, if it's your last stand and you got to get an Ice Beam freeze or something like that, that's helpful. But like I said, Kyogre is position based. It can't always get off those full power water spouts because it's going to get hit. And then sometimes you're at low HP and you have no choice but to close out the game with an Origin Pulse. It does a ton of damage, but it's 85% accurate, just like Precipice Blades from Groudon. I think it's more consistent having the two water moves. You're not always going to be at max HP, and then not having Water Spout on a Kyogre, just Origin Pulse is not really my thing. I think Water Spout and well-positioned Kyogres are devastating. And so this is the spread I went with. It's just max special attack, do as much damage as possible, and the physical bulk was a nice little balance of HP and defense where I survived that Zacian Behemoth Blade, 2 hits guaranteed. So guys, after I had Kyogre, I knew that I wanted a Trick Roomer, a bulky, hard to kill, extremely good position-based Trick Roomer, Porygon2. I think Porygon2 is the most consistent Trick Room setter in the game. It only has one weakness. It resists, it's immune to ghosts, so those big hyper offense scary things like Calyrex aren't as scary, especially if you were using something like Dusclops, stuff like that. And then Mimikyu is extremely frail. You know, you can abuse Mimikyu in certain ways. And yeah, I just think Porygon2 is so consistent. It does great with my positioning, bulky-based team, and I feel like it's good into every single matchup in the game. Yeah, like it says right there in the second bullet, I already got to it, but amazing on position-based, slow teams like this. Let's go. And then, Eerie Impulse, obviously has started picking up a ton on Porygon2 in the last, like, 4 months or so. People just kind of didn't even think about it when Porygon2 first came out, but Eerie Impulse plus Recover is pretty much a win con in itself in a ton of scenarios. Like, late game scenarios where Porygon2 could just 1v3 because it's too bulky. It recovers, hits an attack, recovers again, hits an attack, and just can slowly kill everything on the team. Porygon2 is absolutely insane. I went for an extremely physically bulky Porygon2. I kind of felt that the biggest threats to my Porygon2 were opposing physical attacks. Things like Zacian, Sacred Sword, close combat. Things like Urshifu, close combat. Those kinds of things. And I really liked the balance of this set. It's really nothing special. I don't have any speed. I'm minimum speed. I don't have any special attack. It's just all in bulk. And as you guys can see, I can take a +1 close combat from Zacian. I can take a +1 close combat from Urshifu. That is a choice band Urshifu is the idea of this. It only has a 31% chance to OHKO, and I was pretty confident in that. I felt okay with that. That means that, you know, Sash Urshifu is never going to be able to get the kill on me, stuff like that. And then I went for download. We've been seeing Porygon with Trace causing a lot of issues, tracing things like Prankster, tracing things like Intimidate. It is very, very good when Porygon2 gets an amazing trace off, but on my Rain team, with a terrain control, I do have Rillaboom on this team. Trace could be absolutely catastrophic against Sun teams. I come in and I trace Torkoal's Drought and just completely throw my own strategy. I trace Groudon's Drought or something like that. I trace Psychic Terrain from Indeedee Female after I set up my Rillaboom's Grassy Terrain to help counter that. This is not a team where Trace really does too well. If I was using like a Sun team of my own, or I was using a team with no weather, Trace can really be beneficial in that scenario where I don't have any things that really clash with my team. But Trace on this team would have been very, very not good. It would have made my Sun matchup a lot harder. So we went for download, get that special attack boost, do some damage, and keep the consistency with the team. And then once again, consistency is the key, right? Try attack with Porygon2. It's the biggest damaging attack it can do. It gets stab. And there's a 20% chance to get either a burn, para, or freeze off it. So you've got hacks in your favor 20% of the time. I'm attacking with stab. And it's just a very big, consistent attack. And yeah, like I said, I went with Eerie Impulse to just completely shut down certain Pokemon under Trick Room. Calyrex Shadow, Kyogre, Kyurem White, Reshiram, you name it. Anything that's a special attacker, Venusaur, they get completely shut down by Eerie Impulse, and they can't do anything about it a lot of the time. Because if you hit a Dynamax with Eerie Impulse, they're going to have to switch out or they're going to have to bite the bullet. And then it just opens up that late game win con of just being able to stall out teams and completely win. So that was Porygon2. I've had a very bulky team with a Trick Room mode, and you know who goes absolutely phenomenal with that? The best Pokemon in the game. Incineroar. Incineroar helps set up Trick Room with Fake Out. It helps position your team with Parting Shot, Intimidate, Fake Out. It helps just shut down the enemy team with Intimidate, like I just said. There's a reason why Incineroar is absolutely insane and goes well on practically any team. Or you're using a Rain team, James? Yep, Incineroar's great on a Rain team, baby. He is that good. Also, Dark typing feels so good in this meta right now. To me, it feels almost necessary because if you're immune to Prankster, so things like Scary Face, Thunder Wave, taunts, all that kind of stuff just cannot affect you on Incineroar. And then the fact that Dark types resist both the crazy attacks from Calyrex Shadow, Astral Barrage, and Expanding Force is literally immune. So Dark types feel invaluable in this format, and that's just a bonus Incineroar has on top of all the other amazing stuff it does. And it's great against Sun and Zacian. Those are two of the most popular cores that I wanted to beat in this. Incineroar resists all the fire attacks, resists all the grass attacks. It's got Parting Shot, Snarl, Fake Out, all these great things. And then all those Pokemon that love to be in the sun, Groudon, Venusaur, they do not want to take big fire boosted, sun boosted fire attacks, excuse me. And neither does Zacian. And that's where Incineroar comes in clutch. And then let's get into my choices for Incineroar. Talking about my EV spread, it's honestly nothing too crazy. You know, we've got enough special defense to take a Life Orb, Modest, Max Quake from Venusaur 100% of the time. I think that's a very nice special benchmark to hit with Incineroar if you can afford to hit it. And then the weird thing you can see here is that I am an adamant Incineroar with 36 attack EVs. I also went for safety goggles. The reason why I say both those is that I think that safety goggles and offensive stats synergize with each other extremely well on Incineroar. When you can ignore sleep powders and then smack back with big damage. When you can take a spore from a Moongus under Trick Room or something and then just KO them back with a big Flare Blitz off of an adamant. Incineroar, I just think that the fact that you ignore certain things makes it so your damage capabilities are even higher. So I really love the idea of a more offensive safety goggles Incineroar. And then, like I say here, Rillabooms, Amoonguses, and Venusaurs aren't prepared for adamant Incineroar damage. They're not. When they make their defensive calcs, they make like a 4 attack careful or, yeah, like sassy, careful, those kinds of stuff Incineroar. And they're not really ready for the kind of big damage boost that I have when I'm adamant with a little bit of attack investment. I'm still very bulky. Now, my physical bulk was a lot less than most Incineroars. I would say that a nice benchmark Incineroar's hit is like max HP and I believe it's like 108 defense or something like that. Maybe only like 96 defense or something to survive things like Landorus and stuff at -1. So my Incineroar wasn't quite as physically bulky as you might be used to, but I think my speed was still a really good speed tier. I think that my special bulk was nice, and I loved the damage. I decided to run Darkest Lariat instead of something like Snarl or Taunt, because I was already this kind of Trick Room-centric team. I think Taunt helps shut down opposing Trick Room, opposing setup. I could wash away setup mods with Kyogre, and with my strong Zapdos, and then I liked being under Trick Room a lot of the time, so I didn't feel the need for Taunt. I loved having Darkest Lariat to take out things like Calyrex Shadow, things like Dragapult, all that good stuff. So this was my supportive yet still offensive Incineroar. So I alluded to Zapdos in while talking about my other 3 Pokemon, but this was Zapdos. This was my big second massive damage dealer. 1 being Kyogre, 2 being Cantonian Zapdos. Now, right there, first bullet, insanely strong innate rain synergy. Thunder off of my huge special attack stat, and Hurricane. They are both 100% accurate in the rain. They both have a 30% chance for some BS in your favor. Para from Thunder, Confusion from Hurricane, and they both turn into insanely strong max moves. Both 140 base max moves, max Airstream, max electric, whatever it's called, max lightning, I think. So this bird does a ton of damage, and as you can see, it's life orb. All right, but Zapdos had a big role to fulfill on the team. It helps deal with bulky waters. That's a thing that Kyogre has problems with. Thunder is not enough to get through bulky waters, I will tell you that. It helps a lot, but it's not enough for a whole team, okay? So Zapdos is here with huge max electrics to deal with that. Grass types, things like Rillaboom, things like Ferrothorn, these Pokemon that honestly cause Kyogre a ton of problems, especially if you're not running Ice Beam, are going to get completely and utterly destroyed by max Airstream from Zapdos. And then it resists Zacian and Thundurus as most common attacks. Resists Flying, resists, takes neutral from electric, and then it resists fighting as well, and it resists steel. So it resists all the attacks Zacian commonly runs, and it resists everything from Thundurus except for max Airstream, max electric, which means I get a max Airstream, he doesn't, and now I'm faster the next turn. So Zapdos is honestly extremely good against a lot of the meta picks. Venusaur has trouble hitting it. It can't hit it with max Quake, can't hit it with the grass, and then it can only hit it with Poison, which is its weakest attack, because Max Ooze is weaker than most other Max moves, right? So Zapdos was an insanely good pick against the common meta Pokemon. It's also just naturally way more bulky than Thundurus Incarnate. When you want to compare Zapdos to something, I think a common thing is Thundurus. Thundurus is faster with Defiant, and it's a physical attacker that can't get intimidated. Zapdos is slower, but it is stronger and bulkier, and that was something that I was totally satisfied with, especially on my Trick Room centric team. And then max Airstream onto things like Kyogre on my team were insane. I had speed control, but I was also not max speed, so I could abuse Trick Room with Zapdos as well. So let's get into the details. I decided to go with a little bit more special defense on my Zapdos because I found that I wasn't able to hit any like important 2-hit KO benchmarks with my Zapdos on the physical side. Things like Behemoth Blade, Max Electric from Thundurus. It costed way too many EVs that I didn't have available to me. So I kind of just decided, well, I'm going to go more specially bulky, and I'm going to have to rely on Incineroar and just good positioning to deal with physical threats more. So I could take a Helping Hand, Max Phantasm from Life Orb, Calyrex Shadow. This is Dynamax Zapdos, of course. So that just shows how insane Calyrex Shadow is. So luckily I was able to survive that attack. And then I actually went with Static. Now Static on paper is like, well, yeah, it's a lot better than Pressure. You know, Pressure does nothing. Pressure reveals speed tiers, which is really, really good. If a Pokemon with Intimidate comes out and a Pokemon with Pressure comes out, the abilities go off in order of who's faster. So it would go like Zapdos is Pressure, and then Incineroar's Intimidate. And the thing is like, I'm not running max speed Zapdos. I don't want my opponents to know that I am not max speed. Zapdos demands respect on the field at all times because it's a max Airstream Mon that hits extremely hard. People have to assume that you are max speed Zapdos and play accordingly, right? And so I knew I wasn't max speed. I don't want to let my opponent know that. I don't want them to know any information about my speed tier with the Pressure ability because I know what my speed is and they don't. I don't want to help them at all. And then Static works great with my team. Am I a Trick Room team and I might slow down something on the enemy team to be slower than me under Trick Room? Sure, but this team operates great outside of Trick Room as well. And the chance to para-hacks my opponents is amazing. 25% chance to not be able to attack is awesome. So I knew Static worked great with this team. Anyway, I outspeed Calyrex Shadow at +1. That is the speed tier that I hit. And I naturally outspeed Timid Venusaur. But the big thing here, guys, is that I am not 100, base 100 speed, max speed. I'm slower than that. So when Trick Room is up, I know that my Zapdos is going to guarantee be slower than things like Urshifu, who's always running max speed, base 97. Charizard, you know, Charizard base 100. They always run max speed almost all the time. So I knew I was slower than a lot of these common threats, which was really good for me to know and to abuse pretty much, right? And then I went with Life Orb. You guys already know that I'm modest with a ton of special attack. I'm hitting massive attacks off with Thunder and Hurricane with those boosted up max moves, base power. And then with the Life Orb, I'm just hitting for insane amounts of damage. This Zapdos OHKOs so much stuff in the game. It is insane. And then, like I said right there, Sun will not risk your Zapdos being Goggles or Lumberry in most situations because Safety Goggles is an extremely popular item on Zapdos. And they would literally throw the entire game turn one if Venusaur like clicks Sleep Powder into Venusaur clicks Sleep Powder into Zapdos. I'm Goggles, I kill the Venusaur, and Zapdos beats everything in the back. Charizard, Groudon, Torkoal, they all just get murdered by Zapdos. So even Zacian after a +1 max Airstream with max Flare off of Heat Wave, right? So the thing is they won't risk it. They have to respect that you're Goggles, and then I surprise them with insane damage off of Life Orb because they can't risk it. It's not an open team sheet format. It's best of one. This is what the Players Cup qualifier was. And I thought it was a really good tech, and it just did an insane amount of damage. Kanto Zapdos facilitated so many matchups, so much speed control, and so much damage for the team. Okay, guys, so this was the 5th member of the team that I honestly think really locked up the whole core of the team. I was a little bit hesitant using Rillaboom. I don't know why. I just kind of felt like, oh, it dies really easily. It only uses grass moves. I just felt like you could abuse Rillaboom really easily depending on what team you're using. But I felt that my Sun matchup with those first 4 Mons was a good matchup. I felt like it was like a skill matchup slightly in my favor. But I was having some trouble with some of the more mirror matches, you could say. Other Kyogre teams, bulky waters were still kind of an issue, even with Thunder and Zapdos. And Rillaboom helped clean this up big time. So more Fake Out to help with speed control, to help with setting up Trick Room, and for positioning. That was the whole point of this team, was to get in a good position to sweep with Zapdos, with Kyogre, etc. And then terrain control. This was for things like Calyrex Shadow. Slow, bulky teams love grassy terrain. That's my team. It's a slower, bulkier team. And then when I bring up Calyrex Shadow, I wanted to get rid of Psychic Terrain. That thing loves to go in Psychic Terrain, and I needed to shut that down as best I could. And having terrain control made those matchups a lot easier. Like I said, it's great in the Kyogre, Mirror, and bulky waters in general, which are a problem for Kyogre. So Rillaboom really just facilitated the team a ton. And it honestly did a lot of damage. So let's get into the set. So this is what I'm talking about, guys. The first calc on there is where most Rillabooms, mine included, are only really EV'd to survive a 4 attack Flare Blitz from Incineroar. So as you can see, with 204 HP, 0 defense, I guaranteed live 4 attack Flare Blitz from Incineroar every single time. And I actually went with Assault Vest because it helped so much against some of these crazy hyper offensive teams such as Calyrex Shadow. I've brought up Calyrex Shadow a lot because I gave it a lot of respect in my team building. I felt like my Calyrex Shadow matchup was insanely good because I feel like I did such a good job at countering it. It's great against Lapras. It's great against opposing Kyogres. And then Assault Vest helped against Venusaur or Torkoal in matchups where I needed to bring Rillaboom. I would never bring Rillaboom into the kind of standard Sun where it's like Groudon, Venusaur, Charizard, or Torkoal, Venusaur, Charizard, Zacian. That's like too much kind of firepower for Rillaboom to deal with. But in those teams where it was like Kyogre, Torkoal, Venusaur, Rillaboom could actually make its presence known in that matchup. So Assault Vest honestly did so good. And in my team building, I almost kind of felt like AV Rillaboom isn't doing enough damage. I had high horsepower on there instead of Woodhammer. Me and my roommate and great friend Mike kind of like talked about the team for one night, and we kind of decided that like Woodhammer sounds so much better. Like I'm not really clicking high horsepower into anything necessary, and Woodhammer helped bring this team to the next level, honestly, because Porygon doesn't do a lot of damage at all. Incineroar is a support mon with a little bit of damage capability, because I was adamant. Zapdos, Kyogre, big damage dealers, but that's only 2 big damage dealers with like 1 kind of pseudo damage dealer. I needed another big source of damage, and Grassy Surge boosted Wood Hammer from attack raised Rillaboom does an insane amount of damage. It really clutched out some KOs, and it clutched out some good matchups. And then I went with Knockoff. Knockoff, I always thought Knockoff was a little bit kind of not so good, but in DD Female, Calyrex Shadow, yet again, Porygon2, these kinds of things, they hated getting knocked off. Even legendaries hate getting their item knocked off. Opposing Kyogres losing the Mystic Water, things losing Life Orbs, things losing Citrus Berries. Knockoff felt so good. I kind of didn't think it was that good until I used it, and now I loved it. This is the juicy tech on Rillaboom. I was Brave Nature 17 speed IV. It hit a base speed of, a max speed of 88. And this was slower than Modest Indeedee at 31 IVs. It was slower than Modest Indeedee at 29 IVs, which was actually a tech that Bing Ji Wang made on one of his Blastoise Hyper Offense teams, so that he would always get the Psychic Surge up into a Rillaboom lead. I knew that for me to make that Calyrex Shadow matchup that much easier, I'm just going to go extremely slow Rillaboom. I didn't go minimum speed Rillaboom though, because I ran into some situations where Incineroars and Grimmsnarls had a faster fake out than me, and that honestly made Rillaboom feel a little bit useless in front of certain things like that. But the whole idea of this was you lead Rillaboom Porygon2 into these Calyrex Shadow Hyper Offense teams, and they cannot do anything if they are a Modest Indeedee, which they almost always are. You can look at the stats online on peakalytics.com. They are pretty much always 31 IV Modest. And Grassy Surge goes up. I fake out whichever Pokemon can stop my Trick Room. I get up Trick Room, and Kyogre with Water Spout obliterates the entire team. And this happened in practice. I don't think I lost to a single Calyrex Shadow team, if I'm being completely honest, because they could not stop Trick Room. And then Eerie Impulse B2, Zapdos, slower than everything because it's not 100, it's not max speed, and Kyogre just completely obliterated the whole team. It was awesome. And then last thing, Wood Hammer. It was great. Wood Hammer was the call. Rillaboom was amazing, and it brought my confidence back for Rillaboom for sure. He completed this team. Our final member of the team, ladies and gents, was Metagross. I'm going to be completely honest. This was the least used slot of the entire team. I honestly had a lot of trouble thinking of a Pokemon that really rounded out the team because I was honestly doing extremely well with just the 5 Pokemon that I had originally. I got to about 1850 on Showdown without bringing a 5th Mon ever. It was just those 5 Mons. And that's not like a flex or anything. It was just kind of like, for what I was playing against, I was playing against Zacian, Groudon, Sun pretty much 70% of my games on Showdown because people are very original in their team building. And I would never bring Metagross to those matchups. But Metagross, what it did was it helped me with those rogue team matchups such as Kyurem White, Calyrex Ice, Zekrom, these kinds of things that can be very difficult for Kyogre teams to get through. The biggest one was Calyrex Ice. My Kyurem White matchup was honestly horrible. I think it was practically an auto loss. But I do think Zekrom actually has a lot of trouble dealing with Metagross. So Calyrex Ice was a big matchup that I was struggling with a lot, and Metagross was pretty much put on here so that it wasn't an auto loss for that exact matchup. And then in the third bullet like that, like it says, it was strong versus certain Venusaur Torkoal modes with no Charizard or Groudon. Occasionally you do see just Torkoal and Venusaur on a team together with different kinds of legendaries, such as Calyrex Ice, right? Stuff like that. And I thought Metagross was actually pretty good into those matchups. And yeah, so like it says, this slot was not really used very often. I think I only brought it once, maybe twice in my entire Players Cup for qualifying run. One was into a Xerneas team, which is pretty funny, and I actually didn't play against a single Calyrex Ice at all. So this was a Glumon. It was meant for a few matchups, and yeah, I mean, I can't really say too much about it. I didn't really use it that much. The team operated really well with just 5 Mons. But when we go into here, this spread lives Wicked Blow from Urshifu. What is that? 87% of the time, which was nice. I get the weakest policy up. I can clap back. And the moveset was for the matchups it was meant to be brought for. Now, I think this is a really cool learning lesson. Like I said, Metagross didn't really do too much, but I tailored my attacks purely for those matchups that I just talked about. Calyrex Ice, I'm going to have a Steel type move, obviously. Venusaur Torkoal modes on certain teams. I'm going to have Ice Punch for Venusaur, Stomping Tantrum for the Max Quake boost into Torkoal. Max Quake is phenomenal on Metagross anyway. And I didn't run something like Rock Slide because I never saw myself bringing Metagross into a Sun team with Charizard on it. I think my other Pokemon, Zapdos, Kyogre, Porygon2, and Incineroar did phenomenally against anything with Charizard. So I tailored my moves purely for the matchups I was going to bring it into. So yeah, Ice Punch and Stomping Tantrum for things like Venusaur, Zekrom, Max Quake was extremely nice into that, and Steel for the Ice types, of course. So it was bulky, it was slow. I think it was 1 point slower than my Incineroar, just so or like 2 points faster. It was so that I could just know all my speed tiers really, really well. And yeah, so Metagross closed out the team pretty well. Let's do a little bit of a conclusion for the team. This was a very bulky, flexible, and reactive team that can also blow teams up in certain situations. I could win the long game with Incineroar, P2, Rillaboom, but I could also just obliterate teams that didn't position well into Kyogre. Huge water spouts, Zapdos with the Life Orb, destroying teams. I loved how flexible this team was. And then the Sun and Zacian Thundurus matchups felt like a skill matchup, which I was very satisfied with. What I mean by a skill matchup is I don't feel like any team is at a huge advantage or disadvantage. I think it comes down to outplaying your opponents and kind of the item choices on Pokemon. I think Life Orb Zapdos made my Sun matchup so much better because I just ripped through the enemy team. And like I said, they're too afraid to click Sleep Powder on turn 1. So yeah, I was very satisfied to find what I thought was an even matchup against the most popular teams in the game. I think that that's pretty good team building for how long I had to prepare for this tournament, right? And then I'd say this team has very little brutal matchups like Kyurem White and Calyrex Ice. Calyrex Ice got a little bit better with the Metagross matchup. I think Kyurem White, I played against a few on Showdown on my way training, and I pretty much lost every single time. I honestly don't know how I beat that with this team. That is an inherent problem, though, with Series 8, is that you could just totally lose to certain legendaries because of your team, because you only have one legendary. When you have 2 legendaries, it's a lot easier to, you know, cover your bases, right? But that's how it was. This team was awesome, and here you guys go, is the rental code for the team. You can see it all laid out right there, and there's the rental code for you to use the team yourself. I included my results right there too. I got a global standing of 550. Final rating was 1665, and I knew I could have played more games than this. I only played 25 of my 45 games. I could have went even further beyond plus ultra, but nah, I knew I qualified. I knew this was enough, you know, looking at previous NA results, and I was very satisfied with the team. So guys, please use this team on the ladder. It's extremely fun. I think you're gonna have a good time using this bulky Kyogre squad, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Please leave a like on this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, homies. I do appreciate it so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace, everybody.